let's see, simple techniques for making a Windows computer easier to use. I started off as a computer instructor at a junior college. I started watching people struggling with computers. So I started taking some notes, and the result of all those notes is this presentation, which I wrote about 8 years ago. Since then, Windows has gotten more complicated, and I'll explain that to you as we go along. What else can I tell you about? Let's see, how do you change pages here? Oops. Summary. Okay, now you want to go back a page. Okay, this presentation is already available for you to look at if you have your tablet or laptop handy today at aztcs.org. That's my website in Tucson. I don't live there anymore, but I still manage their website. So I like to stick a lot of interesting stuff on it. Anyhow, just click on meeting notes, and today's presentation is available at the top in PDF format, Adobe Acrobat PDF format. If you want it in PPT or PPTX PowerPoint format, just send me an email. And be sure to get my email address. I'll show it again at the end of the presentation. And I've plastered on this first screen all the various groups I work with or volunteer for. So I'm keeping real busy to try to stay alive during retirement. All versions of Windows suffer from various problems that Microsoft has inadvertently designed into them. And here are some tips and tricks for dealing with these problems in order to make a Windows computer easier to use. Topics. Let's start off by talking about Windows Explorer and File Explorer. Then let's move on to problems caused by hiding file extensions. Windows is the only operating system that does that. Linux and Mac does not hide file extensions. Mac sometimes does, depending on how you have yours set up. Turn off file extensions, hide file extensions in Windows. File and folder naming with year, month, day pre-pended. That makes things sort better. Drag and drop depends on the tip of the mouse cursor. That confuses people. I'll show you that in a minute. Open two windows of Windows Explorer, File Explorer before you drag between them to see exactly what happened during your drag. People drag and they don't know where things go. I've seen people do that over and over again. Rename and copy, and then rename and paste to save on typing. I'll show you that. Right-click on a task button to generate new windows. That's one of my favorite tricks. Use Control+ and Control- to make things bigger and larger in a web browser. Okay, ignore and cancel pop-up messages that tell you that you need to format the disk. I do not know why Windows does that. It's the only operating system that pops up a message telling you to format a hard drive when you have no intention of formatting that particular hard drive when you're running certain utilities, third-party utilities, and some Windows applets. Windows automatically changes default audio devices. I've watched people struggle with their computers after inserting a new headset or a microphone or webcam because Windows automatically makes that device your default and active device. So let's see what I tell you about. Oh, and then, okay. In the lower left region, before I continue, let me show you something. Just for the heck of it, let me show you something real quick. I have in my computer a copy of Windows 7 running inside a virtual machine. I hope you can see that. It's very default looking. A copy of Windows 8 inside my computer, and a copy of Windows 10. If I was doing a demonstration for your users group, I would probably be jumping between these three copies, but it is hard to do so in the Zoom system, so I'll probably just use slides and jump later when people have more questions or when they want to see something again. Now I'm going to make this thing bigger again. All right, hope you can see it as full screen. In the lower left region of your Windows desktop, you will find a folder-like icon on the left side of your taskbar. There, see that? All right. that folder-like icon, and it got real fancy with Windows 10. They added in the thing to hold up the folder. Because that's a bookend, right? It looks like this. That thing opens up, in the case of Windows 8.10, something called File Explorer. And before Windows 8, they called it Windows Explorer. What else can I tell you about it? So I'm going to call it, so that I don't confuse all of you, Windows Explorer / File Explorer, because I have to deal with every version of Windows known to man as a volunteer for all these users groups. Okay, when Microsoft stole DOS, it had a default of a 3-character file extension for every file in the system. Every file in DOS had a 3-character file extension in its name. It started with DOS when they stole it. And that continued on, and versions, none of the earlier versions of Windows hid file extensions. Okay, by the time you got to Windows 95, by default, file extensions are hidden, and they've been hidden ever since. If this is just a slide that tells you that in the Linux and Mac world, they generally don't hide file extensions. What else can I tell you about? Okay, if you have these files in your computer, sample.doc, sample.zip, sample.txt, and sample.exe, when you put them inside your computer, they'll all show up as sample. And that can be a little confusing. Okay, I don't think I have a screenshot showing that, so maybe I should show that. Let me go there. Let's look at Windows 10. Let's look at 7. And I'm going to drag into my Windows 7 computer a copy full of these weird sample files, all of which have the same extension. And I'll double click on it to open up the file. You'll notice that with the exception of sample.doc, every single one of these files shows up as sample. Well, it confuses a lot the newer computer users. Most of you know about this sort of thing, and you know you can right-click to see the real file extension, like by going to Properties, okay? But when you're new to computers, this is one heck of a confusing factor, okay? And even here, you'll notice that they don't really display the real name of the file, even though it's an exe file. So that's how malware writers often send you a bad file to infect your computer. And this is a zip file, and when you look at it, it doesn't really look like zip, but Microsoft tells you it's a compressed file. So you can probably assume that it has a zip ending in it, right? Okay, so what else can I tell you about? I'm going to go ahead and go back to full screen. There's a lot of people complaining about the fact that file extensions are hidden. And what else can I tell you about? All right. You can resolve this problem. A lot of you have, I've noticed, by going to either in Windows Vista, XP, and 7 and 8.1, you can go to the folder options in the control panel and turn off hide file extensions. In Windows 10, you can go to File Explorer options in the control panel and turn off hide file extensions. All of a sudden, the real name of the file starts showing up all over your computer. And that's a great thing. Especially for people like me that work with all these files that people send me as I volunteer for various projects. I want to see the real name of the file, what kind of file it really is, as quickly as possible. And so I don't really want to have to mess around with properties and find out the hard way that somebody has just sent me a piece of malware or something. Okay. What else can I tell you about? Okay, let's move on. If you name files with year, month, day, and then the description of the file, and then the file extension, it'll sort nicer in Windows. Okay. A lot of people have things sorted all over tarnation, I notice, as I watch people in various classes I've taught. If you receive an email receipt, you realize the Girl Scouts just came to my door and we're going to get a receipt I'm also going to scan it in, make it into a PDF. I used to call every one of them Girl Scouts Cookie Share Donation. Well, after a while, I had 10 of them, right? Every year I give them some money to send off cookies to various places to give to the Red Cross and to the troops. So and I finally got smart, and somebody told me that that was dumb. And now I name each one, and this is the file I'm about to make, 217-02-11 Girl Scout Cookie Share Donation PDF. And it'll sort nicely if I have a pile of donation files, and even sort nicer if I have it in a tax folder. That's the month, that's the year, that's the month, that's the date, and then that's the description, and that's the file extension, right? And when you put them in this sort of naming order, things sort nicely from first received to last received, or you can click on the top of a column and sort it in the opposite direction, right? All right, what else can I tell you about? When you first get into Windows, by default, they show you this ugly screen. It looks like a mishmash. If you go into View and you click, this is Windows 10 and 8.1, and you click on View, and you click on Details, and then you'll notice that sorts nicely, and you see more about what's going on. What else can I show you? So it looks like that. It's a sort by the date. Here's some donations I plan to make this year. And so I'm kind of showing you what it looks like in my folder for my taxes. Okay. Now what else can I tell you about? All right. If dragging and dropping depends on the tip of the mouse cursor. Okay, when you drag something, it looks like this big mishmash of stuff. Where you land should be the very point of the cursor. That's where you should start, and that's where you should land. I see people miss the things they're trying to drag all the time when I'm teaching computer classes. The point is where the action is. Okay? Then let's see, what else can I tell you about? Okay, when you drag and drop things on top of a bunch of folders, especially if you have the folders sort of small, you'll probably never find out where they land. I've seen people do that over and over again when they buy new computers. Instead, if you scroll up and down and you drag and drop on top of, and I should show this one, so let me try to demonstrate that one again. Let's see, what else should I show? Let's go back to Windows 7 again. And let's see if we can get things going. I'm going to go ahead in Windows 7. I'm going to go ahead and turn on file extensions. I'm going to go to Folder Options. I'm going to go to View. I'm going to say Show File Extensions by turning off the hide extensions for known file types. Click on Apply. OK. OK. Now I'm going to get folders, and I'm going to have to probably drag in a folder to make this demonstration. All right. Now, I'm going to drag in a second one just so I have more than one in there. And I'm going to, no, it doesn't like it, so I'm going to have to change the name. All right, I'm going to change the name and call it Samples 2. Okay. All I'm trying to tell you, now they have samples, and I've got 2 folders and a bunch of files in my folder here, right? In this folder called, what else? What did I do? Did I mess it up? Okay. Let me get out of here. Let me go Control A, Control C to copy. I'm going to go uphill one if I can. Let's see. I don't. Let's see. I'm going to go uphill one to. I'm going to go actually to Documents. I'm going to go Paste. Okay, now I've got a folder, a folder in the Documents library. It's actually a very complicated folder, right? And if I were to drag something to it, like I drag this file here, this shortcut, if I drop it on top of these files here, it'll nicely copy over there, okay? And so hopefully I'll do that eventually to show you. And if I drop it on top of these folders here, if I'm not real alert, it'll drop into a folder and I won't even know it. So what I recommend that people do is they drop on top of files, not folders. And sometimes you have to scroll up and down to find some files to drop on top of. Okay? What else can I tell you about? Oh, I gotta make it bigger. All right. All right. The other thing I want to tell you about is if you're going to drag things from one spot to another, open 2 windows, because then you can see things going from one place to another. And if you're moving, you can see them disappear from one place. If you're dragging, you can and copying, you can see that you haven't moved something from the original place. Okay, so if you drag from 2 folders, you'll have a better luck of doing what you want to do to the hard drive or your computer. Okay. The other thing you should do is, if you drag, I thought I had a section here about the dragging and let's see, using the right mouse button to drag. Okay, so I'm just going to tell it to you. Okay, it's in there somewhere. Okay, now if you have 2 folders and you're dragging between them, and somewhere in there I think I have some information about that. Supposing I have a folder on the right, another window, I'm going to open a second window. You can right-click on a task button, open a second window, drag the second window over so the 2 don't overlap. And sometimes you can just bump it to the right and it'll open correctly, and they'll nicely fill up half of your screen. If you go to another folder, and I don't think I've got another one on this computer, let's just use hide seed files. Here's a folder, 2 folders. If you drag between 2 folders and you use your right mouse button, at the end of the drag, your computer pops up and asks you what you want to do. You want to copy, you want to move, or you want to cancel the activity. Well, if you use your left mouse button to drag, it just does whatever default activity is supposed to happen, and you may not know what you've done, or where you may not know that in some cases you're moving, in some cases you're copying. So it's best to use the right mouse button to your dragging, especially if you're new to computers. Okay? What else can I tell you about? Okay, we're going to keep moving on. 2 windows, rename and copy. Okay, show you another trick. If you have a new folder or a file that has a similar name, I'm going to try to do this in the demonstration screen again. Let's use Windows 8 this time. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get it going. I'm going to get a folder going. I'm going to copy it over to here. No, that's just a shortcut, right? So I made a shortcut by default, which is all right. Then I'm going to get another folder. I'm going to go probably pictures and drag it over. I made another shortcut. I'm going to open them both up. So I end up with 2 folders, 2 windows showing folders, right? Now, if I bump it to the left, if I can grab it here and bump it to the left, it'll fill up half the screen. If I take the other one and I bump it to that's the wrong one, isn't it? All right, let's go to that one. If I take the other one and I bump it to the right, it'll fill up that part of the screen. So it's nicely half and half, right? If you drag from one to the other, and what I was going to show you is, if you have a name for a folder already, but you want to change the name of the folder, it's a new folder, right? You can, suppose I want to change the name of this folder to Custom Office Templates 3. If I right-click on Custom Office Templates, I click on Rename, and I right-click on it again and click on Copy, then I right-click on the new folder and I click on Rename, and then I right-click and I click on Paste, you'll notice that I've copied the name of the first folder to the second folder, but that won't fly, right? Because it'll complain. So I'm going to make a small change to it. I'm going to call it the second Custom Office Templates. Then I hit Enter. That just saved me a big pile of typing using the right click and the copy and the rename. So I've got a bunch of instructions in text telling you how to do this, okay? But maybe you prefer to see it. I'll make it bigger again so you can see it. You prefer to see it in screenshots. If you want screenshots, give me a call or send me an email. I'll send you a pile of screenshots showing you how to do it. But the text also tells you how to do it, okay? What else can I tell you about? Control plus and control minus is my favorite. If you're in any web browser, any standard web browser, Edge, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, and it works even in Macs and in Linux. You press Control and then hold it down and then press the plus, and press the plus a bunch of times. You'll make everything that you're looking at bigger. If you hold the Control and then you press the minus, which is above the equals, I believe. No, it's the other way around. Plus is above the equals. And then press minus, it'll make things smaller. That way, you can make things easier to see. In some cases, it brings into your Windows, your browser window, stuff that's off the screen because it's too big. Okay, so I can probably show you that real quick too. It's probably quite kind of. Let's show you that one in Windows 10 and open a browser window and see if I can get going with it. Okay, and this is very common. Let's look at news. See if Google has any news for me today. Apps, they don't have a news site, huh? News. Let's go CNN.com. Oh, that'd be interesting. Okay, that's my favorite news. Okay, and that's my favorite president. Control plus makes things bigger. See? Now I'm looking, and Control minus makes them smaller. So it's up to you what size you want, and sometimes that's the only way you can read text in a web browser. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go back for a quick second and make this PowerPoint page big again. So try that. Now, if you can't get to something, happens all the time in Yahoo Mail and in Gmail. If you can't get to some button, it just stays off the screen. No matter how many times you press Control plus or Control minus, go and press the maximize button. For that maximize button at the very top of your web browser window, and all of a sudden that whatever is stubbornly off your view comes into view, and you can use it. Okay, so I don't know why people write their websites so that certain buttons get hidden by the edges of their pages to where if you click on the button, nothing happens. But that happens in Yahoo Mail all the time. So click on that. When you click on that, you will end up with that button suddenly shrinking inside into view, and the fact that it's half hidden will disappear, and you'll be able to use it. Okay? Then you can click that button again, and you'll restore back to whatever size you had. Okay? Now, here's another thing I want to tell you about. If you have a pop-up that looks like this, I see this all the time when I'm running various software for fixing hard drives, and when I'm trying to when I get into disk management inside Windows, the control panel, or when I get into the Windows to Go applet, which is part of Windows for Windows 8.1 and higher, it pops this up. If you click on it, and it happens to be to be defaulted to some drive that has data on it. In my case, my E drive is the second solid state drive that has a ton of data on it. If I click on format, I will be very unhappy with myself. Okay, so I don't know why Windows pops up this darn thing. It doesn't happen in Linux. It doesn't happen in the Mac. It's just a good thing that happens in Windows. So click on cancel before you damage your drive and end up having to do hours of work to replace it. There's the information on it. I don't know why it does it. Okay. Now, here's the last thing I wanted to spend a little time on. I watched people struggling with sound devices. In the old days, it was easy. You've got a pair of speakers, you plugged it into your computer, you're done. Okay? Now, from Windows Vista on, when you plug in certain devices, the sound portion of that device is immediately enabled, and the headset you're using is immediately disabled. I was planning on demonstrating this, but I suddenly realized it would play havoc with this presentation. So I may check it out and not show this to you. Okay? What else can I tell you about? If you plug in an HDMI monitor, most monitors have an HDMI port on them right now, right? That they took over from the DVI and VGA type ports and cables. You plug it in, and your monitor has an audio circuit in it. It's called having audio support. Then sound will immediately move digitally over your HDMI cable to your monitor. Well, what happens if your monitor doesn't have speakers built into it? It's not one of those fancy gamer monitors. Or what happens if you don't? You've got a jack in the back of your monitor, like the one that I'm using today, for plugging in speakers, and there's no speakers attached to it. When you do that, you've killed any audio you're playing, including your headset. So that makes for an exciting day if you're trying to demonstrate something to people, or if you're trying to get some work done. If you're working for a company, you'll probably call tech support and wait an hour or two for them to show up. So to turn your existing speakers or headset back on, you have to go to the Playback tab in the sound applet inside the control panel. Most people know that after they've been bamboozled by this glitch a few times. So if you go to, same thing happens when you attach a webcam. If you attach a webcam, about half of them have a microphone in them. It's a real terrible condenser mic, which sounds real terrible, unlike this high audio, high fidelity mic I'm talking on right now. It's my voice that's bad sounding, okay? It's not the mic. If you plug in any webcam that has a microphone built into it, it will immediately become the default microphone for your Windows Vista through 10 computer, and any headset you're using for talking to somebody will immediately go away. Well, sometimes in the middle of a presentation, someone asks you to plug in or a Skype session, someone asks you to plug in a webcam to show them something, or so that they can look at your smiling face. Well, as soon as you do that, you're kicked off of. They can't hear you anymore, because that webcam becomes a terrible condenser mic, which half the time doesn't work. Okay. So what else can I tell you about? If you lean on your monitor and you accidentally disconnect it and you re-plug it back in, and you only have one monitor, and that monitor has HDMI sound support, immediately that monitor will become the default playback device for your computer. All you did was accidentally pull out the cable and pushed it back in. I just did that to prove it to myself before this presentation. And the same thing goes for DisplayPort monitors. Some monitors use a DisplayPort cable, especially Mac ones, instead of an HDMI cable. DisplayPort also carries audio digitally to your monitor. And so when you pull it out and you plug in push it back in, the DisplayPort monitor will take over, and if you don't have a speaker attached to it, no one hears you anymore. Okay. Here's an example of what happens. I started off. These are real screenshots I took. I dare not show this to you live, right? I was using the Realtek audio output, which is on the motherboard of my fancy computer. And then I was listening to some audio music on it, and then I went ahead and I disconnected my LG monitor and I reconnected it. No, actually, I disconnected my monitor and I changed over to a newer monitor because I wanted to see something in widescreen. And immediately, I didn't ask it. The Windows didn't tell me. My LG monitor became my default speaker, and I didn't have speakers attached to it. So that was the end of my listening session for a while, right? I wasn't listening to my music anymore. What else can I tell you about? Okay. Okay, if you have a monitor that doesn't have audio support. There's no audio circuit in it, even though it's a DisplayPort or HDMI type monitor. You can disconnect and reconnect it all you want, and this reconfiguration done by Windows does not occur. So about one monitor I have has it, one monitor I have does not have audio support. They're both HDMI monitors. What else can I tell you about? Okay, it gets even more complicated. In Windows 7, 8, and checking my time here, and 10, you have 2 devices inside for playback and 2 devices for recording. You have a default device and a default communications device. That complicates things even more. Okay, let me tell you why. And this guy here wrote a real good explanation of what the difference is, and I love his website. It's called Ask Leo, and he says a default device is any device, but then a default communications device is a device such as Skype that is used for communications. Okay, now, well, but some programs like Skype lets you then pick which device you want once you're in the program. So that's helpful, right? If you're going to have Windows reconfiguring things for you. What else did I tell you about? When when you plug in a webcam or you plug in a monitor or a different headset, and any of these devices that have audio capability, you don't know whether Windows is going to reconfigure your default device, your default communications device, or both. So I got the surprise of my life in the middle of a presentation a little while back. I'll show you what happened. I was busy using some speakers for a default device so I can listen to music through my surround sound here. I was using my headset for communicating with people so that I can hear what they're saying better and not have to boom it all through the house. And then when I plugged in my what happened here? Let's see, I'm trying to show you the screen. Let's see what happened. Okay. I plugged in my new monitor while I was talking to somebody. This fancy widescreen monitor. It made itself into the default communications device. Immediately, I couldn't hear what the guy was saying because I don't have any speakers attached to it. See? So I had to go back and I had to set it back. And then, let's see, what else can I tell you about? Okay, when I plugged in the webcam a bit later in the day, it became the default device. And I never want to use a webcam for a default microphone because it's kind of a raspy sounding, makes my terrible sounding voice even worse. So that's what happened there. And then when that happens, I've got to go in there, open up the control panel, go to the sound applet, go to the recording, and I have to click on the right click. The left click will not work. Right click on the microphone and set it for both as my default device and my default communications device, or whichever combination I want. If I'm using the speakers for listening, I would just set my microphone as the default communications device. Actually, the speakers wouldn't have anything to do with it. Forget what I just said. All right. In the case of a microphone, set it always for both default device and default communications device. That discourages Windows from changing it next time you plug in your another webcam. Okay, doesn't always work. What else did I tell you? See, I make the default on so you don't end up recording. Okay, my advice is don't plug in anything that has audio capability when you're using the audio capability of an existing device. Do that offline when you're not using something. That makes life simpler. And also, before you use any device, go into your sound icon and disable the heck out of anything that you're not using. That helps. Okay, let me show you something real quick just for laughs. This is my real computer, okay? I'm going to show you. This is not my virtual machine. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to right-click, go to Control Panel, and you probably can't see it. I'm trying to maximize it. No, you still can't see it. All right. You go to Sound, and I'm going to try to make it as big as possible. There's a possibility you can't see this. That's one reason. Okay, like there's no way to make it bigger because I'm not inside a web page, right? So I would have to change the overall resolution of the screen. You'll notice that I have a pile of speaker devices in my computer for playing sound. You'll notice that at the very bottom is a device, the front jack of my motherboard sound card. Okay, and above it, you'll see 4 speaker devices. Above the bottommost one is my rear panel jack, which is treated by Windows as a separate sound card. And then above it, you'll see there's 4 sound cards that are provided by this NVIDIA graphics adapter that I purchased from Fry's. There's 4 of the darn things. There's a separate sound card circuit on the very bottom here, right here, for the HDMI port. No, this one right here on port 0, and a separate sound card for each display port in the back of this graphics adapter. So you have sound circuitry for playback, speaker circuits basically, galore in your computer these days. This is just a very standard computer I bought from Costco. And so the problem is anytime you insert a sound capable monitor or any webcam, it'll jump and make that device into a default device. See? So it's a little inconvenient. And I wish they would take the lead of the Mac and Linux people and quit doing that. Okay? What else can I tell you about? 11:39. I probably could entertain some questions. I know I went over a lot of stuff real fast. I might just go back and show you some more things. If you're finding what I told you too rudimentary, and that's true for about half of you out there, I have a second presentation, which I'd love to show you some to your users group, called making a more advanced set of ways to make your computer easier to use. So if you want, unless I get any questions, I might jump into some of them. So David can tell me if there's any questions.
Okay. One, I just wanted to let you know that this presentation will be available on the APCUG website along with his site. His site is available now. The website should be available sometime in the next couple of days, because I know he presented a lot of useful information. But I did get one question Oh, you talked about that message, the format disk, want to format disk E, and someone wants to know what causes that to pop up in the first place, because they don't want to lose all the info accidentally.
Nobody knows. I just know I see it once in a while. And all I know is if I click on OK, I would have a very bad day and a very bad bunch of hours, perhaps several days, fixing this hard drive of mine that has all this crucial data on it. Nobody really knows why that occurs. And
if you click cancel, do you still have a good hard drive?
Absolutely.
Anytime this happened to me, it means my hard drive died.
Oh, that also pops up when your hard drive dies. But recently I was showing people various software, how to fix to test your hard drive, to look into your hard drives. I have a whole presentation about that. And then I was showing people how to make a bootable hard drive to boot up your copy of Windows. A copy of Windows for any computer. It's called Windows to Go. And it seems like every once in a while when I'm doing these things, that crazy error message pops up. And a lot of people will accidentally click on it and format some unintended hard drive. I've seen this error message for about 10 years now. I guess Microsoft somebody in Microsoft wrote some code, and then they laid off the poor guy, and they never went back to fix it. You've got to realize that Microsoft Windows consists of about several hundred modules written mainly in the C++ language, and if they lay off somebody, they can't get back into the code to resolve it, and sometimes they don't get around to replacing the whole module. So it's not open source. If it was open source, somebody would have gotten into that code and fixed it. So that's another plug for going to open source. I don't get that error message ever in Macs. I think the Mac people are more picky. They would be all over pounding on the Genius bar, screaming if that happened to them. But I've been seeing this error message over and over again, and I know by now. One time I had a bad day. I come home from some party, and I clicked on it by mistake. And that formatted my drive very nicely. So once you start the format, there are ways you can go back and get some of your files using software utilities, but there's no way you can normally make your drive bootable again without jumping through all kinds of tricks using Windows and other tools.
Yeah, that's a good reason to back up all your hard drives.
That's correct.
Okay, there are several different comments in here about how to make the screen bigger and smaller that I'm going to pass over and just tell you that there are a lot of different ways you can make your screen bigger and softer in Windows and in presentations. Mm-hmm. But someone wants to know about getting into safe mode in Windows 10. Sort of off topic, but...
Okay, safe mode in Windows 10, you get in from... let's see if I can figure it out. If you go into Windows 10 and you go into the Start button, the easiest way to get into it is to click on the Settings. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. The Settings gear, which is over here. And then if you then go, in this case, to Update and Security, and then you go into Recovery, and you go to, let's see, Advanced Startup, Restart Now, then one of the options will be to start up in safe mode. And the other option will be start up with multiple options. There's several options. But the best way to get into in Windows 10 to get into safe mode, and incidentally, the best way to get into your BIOS, which is now called a UEFI, is through this button called Restart Now inside Advanced Startup.
Yeah, there's also a shortcut to that, which is the Windows Screen tab or Windows Screen something another that I don't remember off the top of my head, but you can Google it. Mm-hmm. That'll get you there because that's when you have to start up and you want different options to get back when you're trying to boot. Mm-hmm. Also, as I said, you can also start up if you happen to get lucky and catch it. In your setup, when you get to the boot, you can F2, F8, and some of the machines will tell you, well, how do you do it? It just depends on how the different machines. So, and that's one of the good things you can Google for your machine is how to get into safe mode on Windows 10 in this device.
It says here you press the Shift key, and then you click on the Restart button. So you hold down the Shift key.
Okay, don't do it.
I'm not going to do it because I still want to use this virtual machine for any other questions. Plus there's...
Yeah, okay, it's the Shift key and the Restart key. Okay.
At the same time, leave the Shift button down and then click on the Restart with the mouse.
Okay, that will do it. That will get you where you need to be. Okay, I knew there was some sort of shortcut.
Yeah, at least that's the one that most people use.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? And I know that this will be a big thing, and Judy will get this up as soon as she can.
I don't know if you can see it, but this is the more complex way to make Windows easier to use. I know I'm running out of time. My favorite ways of making Windows to use is to spend money, at least now that I'm retired. And I'm not as coordinated as I used to be. Okay? Get a monitor with a touch screen. They don't, the smaller monitors have touch screens now, a lot of them. I finally bought one and I love it. Removing bottlenecks from your home network. You notice how Windows freezes a lot now, Windows 10? It's because Microsoft decided they own your computer and they can update when they want. And they can do things in the background when they need to, okay? Remove bottlenecks from your home network to give them as much of a chance to do their thing as possible. I have a whole presentation on that. One big bottleneck is Hewlett-Packard 10-base 1 gigabit speed network adapters. They bottleneck the heck out of your network connection. I just bought a Hewlett-Packard computer, and I was only getting half my bandwidth, internet bandwidth, and things were slow to molasses because I'm not used to half the speed. And I had to buy a USB gigabit Ethernet adapter to speed it up. The one that they gave me on the motherboard was terrible, okay? And then banishing your computer to the next room. I'll show you what I do. I have a gamer machine. It sounds like a Sherman tank, okay? Here's what I do, and I know I'm running out of time. And this is the thing I bought to speed up my HP computer in this house. It's not mine, it's someone else's, okay? If you have a gamer machine, it is loud, okay? It's loud. It's so loud, and it generates enough heat to keep you warm. My friend uses it for a heater. It doesn't have a heater in his bedroom over in Tucson. If you run extension cables using some of this new technology and banish your computer to the next room, all of a sudden your music in your current room and your presentations you make sound better. And anything you do with your computer that is noise-based, you want to hear that rushing air sound. I've got about 8 fans in my computer in the next room. I don't hear them in this room through this drywall. Then I ran cables, and I made a UL listed penetration. I used to be an electrician between the 2 rooms, and put in some fire-stopping pillows and other things in case of fire. And I ran cables to the other room, and now my computer is safely 30 feet away from me and behind a drywall. So that's another thing that makes my computer a lot easier to use. Costs money, but it's worth it to do. Okay?
Okay, Francis, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. We need to get everybody a 10-minute break here at least to shift and stretch and visit with the water or whatever they got to do before we go into our final great presentation by Diane McKeever. So as I said, if you have any questions or stuff and you think of them after that, feel free to email Francis at his address on the screen.